Welcome back to the 27th. This is a custom setup analysis for the BT46B. It's been a couple of weeks since its release, but it's been on my mind for all this time. I don't want to get into too much detail, as we all know the historical context of the BT46B already. If you need a refresher, watch my default setup analysis. However, it's important to note that there are historical facts about the 46B, and then on the other side of the coin, there are the practical matters of its implementation in the game. And coming to terms with that is one of the first things we need to do when approaching this setup. After my research and some lengthy and enlightening conversations with some of my trusted colleagues, you know who you are, we were able to boil down a setup methodology with the BT46B that I feel improves the package. Now, I'm not going to beat around the bush. There's no fan vacuum effect on the coding of the BT46B you see here. Whether or not there should be, or whether it's even possible to program such an effect in-game, is a topic for another day. Let's deal with the practical reality, which is that in order to mimic the RPM-based vacuum effect, the BT46B instead is programmed to have a robust blown diffuser. It did not have a blown diffuser nor a regular diffuser in real life, just to be clear, and the diffuser is a very finicky piece of equipment. To operate at its fullest capacity, it has to be at the perfect angle and have sufficient air under the car to work. If the diffuser is too low to the ground, or if it is starved of air, it stalls, which would be felt as a sudden drop of downforce. If it's too high off the ground, it loses effectiveness. So initially, in order to find this diffuser sweet spot, we stiffen the package to the extreme almost. Springs, ARBs, dampers, you name it. If it was stiff, we put it on the car. This helped us manage the pitch of the car when entering the corner and exit. A pitch forward could potentially raise the diffuser too high, and a pitch backwards and the diffuser could stall. Next, we figured out the perfect ride height and rake for the maximum diffuser efficiency. We relied heavily on the telemetry data for this. Next, I worked on the differential, which was kind of interesting. The car is 100% locked, like 95% of the time, if that makes sense, but still kind of snaps open while cornering sometimes, and I wanted to mitigate that snap unlock in sharp corners. I mean, it still does a little bit now, but it's a lot smoother. How do I say this? I took like the whoa out of it, you know. Finally, I revamped the gearing for more control, especially in first gear. The RPM and shift progression is also more gradual. It's still grumpy in first and second gear, just not as much. But that's not nearly the end of the story. As always, I try to set a leaderboard time for an easy download, so that's there at Jacerparagua 88 for you. But then I take it to a race. And immediately when I did that, the car was broken again. Worse than before. It simply did not work. So after 3 nights of testing, I was gutted, dejected, depressed, looking in the mirror and questioning life choices. Maybe that's a little bit dramatic. Let's just say I was unhappy. But again, I'm privileged to know some champions in the AMS2 community like Ettore. He reminded me that I should look into the ride height. And at that moment, I felt dumb and grateful at the same time. Of course, I increase ride height with diffuser cars all the time. I couldn't believe I forgot it. The diffuser was simply starved in traffic. So not only was the BT46B getting the general aero wash you'll find in the F1 car, especially one that has low downforce from the wings in the first place, but also the diffuser stopped working because of lack of air underneath the car. The solution is to simply raise the ride height. And that, ladies and gentlemen, fixed the BT46B. The 4-night testing saga was over. End monologue. But not quite. Let's briefly look at the telemetry to highlight some things. So here we are with Racing Sim Tools. As you can see in the top left here, we have 3 logged sessions. The first one being a default package, second one being the solo low ride height build, and then we have what ultimately worked out the best in the race, which was a high ride height build. And we're on the under the suspension tab under modal analysis, and modal analysis is sort of the way the game, the way RST shows you the attitude of the car. So you're looking at roll, pitch, heave, and warp. We're going to focus in a little bit on roll in the beginning, and you can see that the default package has a pretty high roll. That being, it's because it's relatively soft. You're looking at upwards of, you know, over 60 millimeters of roll from side to side, from this point to these sharp peaks over here. Let's take a look at the race build. That's been relatively mitigated. We're still up here in, you know, almost in the 30s on this side, but you know, we're at 22 here, 21, 22. So you're looking at about a 50 millimeter roll from side to side. But check out the solo low ride height build, and you can see that it's been severely dampened. You can see, like, here we have peaks of 26, and then down here peaks of 22. So you're looking more in the high 40s as far as the side-to-side roll. The other thing that was interesting here was also the pitch. I thought pitch was extremely important. I said it was important for the diffuser. And you can see that under acceleration, the pitch of the car with the default package was in the 20 millimeter range. And then when you were decelerating, you were looking at, you know, a pitch of about 21. It looks like peaked here. Take a look at the TT build, and you can see that the pitch going down the straight was a lot more limited, and also under braking it seems to be mitigated a lot more as well. The damping package has something to do with this. So we stiffened the rear rebounds quite a bit so that the rear end stuck to the ground a lot more and was reluctant to come back up, especially under braking. Let's move into the aero tab, which I think is actually kind of interesting, and you can see the top graph here. The blue represents the rear wing. In the RST software, it's represented in newtons. I don't know if these numbers are actually like legit numbers in newtons, but I think it's important to see the relative differences in aero, so we'll be switching back and forth quite a bit. But the blue indicates rear downforce, the red indicates front wing downforce. The blue is, like, you know, rear wing and diffuser. So you can see that we gain some downforce with the low ride height solo build that we put together. But check out the high ride height build. The max downforce is actually really, really high. We're talking about 9,000 Newton range. Like I said, it's just a relative figure, but take a look at the default. It's, you know, you're looking at 8,000. So we're gaining almost like 15% more downforce with the setup adjustments that we made over the default. But that's not the whole story. A big part of Jacerparagua is the corner entry of that long, really high-speed corner at the end of the back straight. So here we're going to focus in on this section right here, this braking and acceleration zone. Look at the downforce here with the default package. It looks like it bottoms out at 3,200 newtons roughly. Let's take a look at the custom default solo build, and it looks like it bottoms out in that section. Well, let's be honest here, it's 33, which isn't too bad, but generally speaking, it's higher, right? It jumps up really in this when you start accelerating. You need the downforce when you're accelerating here. Let's take a look at the high ride height build, and wow, that's even more impressive than the low ride height build. But you know, that's not surprising that you'd get a little bit more downforce with all of the air underneath the car. However, keep in mind, a higher ride height adds more roll. That means there's more sluggish reactions to driver steering inputs. So let's distinguish these and show where the time was gained and or lost between the two builds. So let's switch over to the time slip graph. I'm going to choose the time trial and then compare that to the race build. So the time trial is blue, the race build is red, and then where you're going to see that we just gradually gain time pretty much in most cornering situations throughout the entire course of the lap. We maybe lost some in the third sector, but we gained it right back all the way through the last corner. We gained over a second to the high ride height build. Let's compare the solo build to the default build, shall we? And look, it's just a massive amount of time that we just slowly accumulated over the course of the lap, starting at turn 1 and ending at the final turn. And you can see basically really there's some gaping dissimilarities between the cornering speeds, especially at that high speed zone where you need that rear downforce, where you need to be able to put that foot down and keep the power on, or keep the speed up. Finally, let's look at the traction circle. I was looking at this. It's an interesting graph. There's really not much to show here, honestly. I thought the traction circles looked pretty good for all of the different builds. I mean, this is the one that was surprising to me the most. The high ride height build took advantage of a lot stronger max grip data points. However, the general data points for grip were, a little bit less. So let's take a look at the solo build, and you can see that although I didn't get that max that I did with the other one, we were able to concentrate it a lot more, especially up here in the acceleration areas where you're turning and accelerating at the same time. You want to get those wheels down, you want them to be stuck to the tarmac, and you want to exit the corner with as much anger as possible. Sometimes with the BT46B it fights you because the differentials the car's just way too powerful for a right hand foot to control sometimes. So any wheel slip on corner exit will cost you some time, but I think if you wanted a more consistent corner exit, the custom build that I'm building for you today certainly provides it. So that's the BT46B. 4 grueling nights of testing complete. You know this stuff from me a lot. A lot of it is academic, but I realize with this car that it's not just numbers. I have emotions tied up with this for some reason. So again, I wanted to thank my community for going through this with me. The mental exercise is invaluable. That being said, the channel will be changing some directions moving forward. I'm going to be slowing the number of track-specific GT3 and GT1 builds in favor of more custom default builds. I have a growing list of requests and a lot of F1 cars, guys. Jeez. Also, I'm considering featuring some type of edited and commentated custom championship season. Setups will be involved, of course. Again, the solo build is downloadable from the leaderboards. Jacerparagua 88. The race build is the exact same, except for fuel and ride height. That's it. I hope you enjoy it. In the meantime, thanks for watching and take care.